Hi, everybody. This is Jarrod again for Cognigy with CX Disruptors. I'm really excited. I have Sheila McGee-Smith here with me today. She is the president and principal analyst of McGee-Smith Analytics. I'll let her introduce herself because she knows more about it than I do.
Sounds like a plan.
I hope so.
I have a feeling that a lot of the people who care about CX Disruptors may in fact know who I am. I'm an industry analyst. I've been covering the contact center space full-time since 1990.
Ooh.
So closing in on 23 full years.
Back when it was call center and not contact center.
Oh my gosh, it was ACDs. The first analyst report I ever wrote in this space in 1990 was ACDs in the 90s.
Ooh, cutting edge stuff.
So what's interesting about that is many of the players that we know today obviously didn't exist when I first started, right? AT&T was one of the first ACD providers. Rockwell was actually the first, right? So I worked with them, but I have seen everybody else grow up over time. And so I sort of know their paths and I remember it pretty well. I remember the promises and I remember the ones kept and not kept.
I was going to say the promises are the ones that's what they don't want you to remember usually.
Exactly.
It definitely gives you a lot more perspective, and I think most of us who are, I don't know, I guess in a sense it's all digital all the time, and it's hard to imagine when it wasn't.
Absolutely.
But given that background and this wealth of experience, let me go the opposite direction and say 2023 has been crazy. What is not going to change in 2024, right? We all know, AI, ChatGPT, blah, blah, blah. But what's evergreen? What's still going to be the same this year?
So I'm going to start by saying the sky is still not falling, right? Okay. There was I think a year ago in November of 22, when OpenAI really burst through general awareness, right? A lot of us in the industry knew about AI. We didn't know probably as much about large language models as we all do now. But that first quarter, there was a lot of fear, uncertainty about whether this meant the end of agents, right? One of the things I do is work with financial analysts, people on Wall Street, but also in, obviously there's financial analysts all over the world, in Europe, in Israel, and other places. And there was a concern that contact center vendors were no longer a safe bet. We're no longer a safe investment, because this would just mean all agents would disappear in a very short amount of time.
You're thinking of like CCaaS or BPOs or all of them?
More CCaaS, right? Because BPOs can transition to digital, right? Yeah. They can do both. And so I spent a lot of time that first quarter talking financial analysts off the ledge, proverbially, not literally. But I think many didn't realize that AI had been an important part of customer experience roadmaps from the vendors for years, right? They suddenly thought that the live agent workforce would disappear overnight, and it's not going to. The other thing is, to your point about having been in this market for a long time, it doesn't change very quickly. Yes, I think generative AI is going to make a change. I think, I would predict, and we'll wait till the next question, that there will be change. I'll save the answer to that for another reason. But there's a lot of things that are not going to change, right? We're going to incorporate new technology as we have for decades, right? I was listening to an earlier podcast of yours, and I resonated with something that was said, which was, first we thought email was going to come for the call center, right? Yeah. Then we thought chat. Then we thought, the web. And we're still here, right? So as much change is still afoot, what's not going to change? The contact center is still going to be here. We might get a new name someday, but right now the contact center has been working for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think back as there's so many sort of foundational technologies that are just a gimme, right? Everybody's got a CRM. Most everybody has CCaaS. Everybody has some kind of ticketing, some form of knowledge management. We don't even talk about that because it's so obvious. And yet when AI comes and will absolutely just become another basic, the world's going to end. And I think,
So
haven't we been through this with new technology?
I want to put a pin in and react to something you just said a little later, which is everybody's got CCAS.
I qualified it. I stepped back off the ledge.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you started to touch on this. So, okay, the sky's not falling, but what will impact 2024 the most?
So I think it will be generative AI. I think I think what happened in 23 is very quickly the one use case that almost every vendor jumped on and started delivering by the end of the year was summarization, right? It was something that, agent summarization of an interaction, right? I just spent 15 minutes on the phone with a customer. I can either spend 5 minutes doing some really bad notes, which is typically what was happening, or I can let generative AI produce something. I can then curate it, right? Human in the loop here, and have a really good record going forward for the next agent to pick something up. What was so interesting to me is how many contact center executives I've spoken to in 23 who said summarization is so important because we weren't doing it at all. Exactly.
Ooh.
When you think about it, how many times have I gotten onto the phone and said to the agent, could you please read the notes of the last interaction? Not knowing, so much of the time, because it took so much time. And I guess there was a sense that the value wasn't there, right? The ROI against the time it took against thousands of agents, right? But now,
and all the calls in the queue that they can see right in front of them.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that next caller can just start all over again. So Gen AI got started in 2023. What I'm excited about is what's going to happen in 2024, right? It's interesting. There was this point in time, I remember very clearly, that Cognigy did a webinar with its senior executives and some partners, right? Some systems integrator partners. And it was probably the best articulation that I had seen to that point of what Gen AI was going to mean in the customer experience space, right? I mean, it was very early on. And the top line point was Gen AI is great. We in customer experience have been doing a great job with other aspects of artificial intelligence. And there are pros and cons of each, but it's when you marry the two that you really get the value, right? And so I think we're going to see, in 24, many more use cases, right? The ones I'm excited about are things like automatic creation of a chat or text or a voice bot, right? Instead of having to spend, to be able to actually start with a prompt that says, give me all the steps needed to create this bot. And then some portion of the work is now done. Some of the, mundane part of the work is done for the developer. And
I have to say, this has existed for a while now.
Right. But Gen AI helps it, right? Helps it along.
Because of that. Yeah. Based on that.
Right. It helps create the intents instead of somebody sitting in a room and thinking about how many ways can somebody say they want to cancel. And, think about it. In a room, maybe they'd come up with 50 if it was a creative group. And Gen AI may come up with 1,500, right? So obviously Gen AI is going to continue to impact. I think the other part that is exciting is about not thinking about something like OpenAI, which is trained on the open internet, but thinking about solutions that are trained on your information and your data.
That's what I haven't heard enough about, is I think if you have transcripts, right, of your calls, I mean, obviously, apparently that you don't have a lot of information in your cases in some, but training it on that.
So this week, I just came from Las Vegas and the Amazon AWS reInvent conference, and they announced Amazon Q. And Amazon Q is exactly that for Amazon. It's trained on 17 years of knowledge and documents about Amazon. And so it gives it the context of what Amazon people need to know. People using AWS need to know. And I think that the concept that they introduced will be useful across all industries, all enterprises, saying, I need to be working with something that has the context of my business and my customers.
Absolutely. And I think one of the initial misconceptions was we exactly need something like this, but wait a second, didn't it cost OpenAI multiple arms and legs and months to train this thing? And we thought, how are we going to have that, say, for a company who isn't maybe as large as Amazon? But now that you start seeing other ways of using generative AI, which I'm not as familiar with Q yet, but combining that with, say, vector search, where you've got a combination of fast information, but generative AI to deliver it in that contextual way very quickly. And then that lets you specialize.
I think to generalize the comments I made about Amazon Q is more tools are being created for enterprises to use to then be able to deploy generative AI in their businesses in more specific ways.
All right. Now I hope this is a fun one. I guess it could go either way. What is the best customer story you have heard all year?
So it's interesting. There are two ways of thinking about it. And the way I think about it is, what is the best deployment of technology customer story? Not a consumer. So I'm not quite sure what you were looking for, but let me go with that first one, because that's the way I think about the world, right?
Okay.
And again, we can come back to that point about how much of the world is CCaaS, right? And so if you think about it, there's about 15 million agents in the world. Agent licenses is actually the way to think about it. And by the end of 23, arguably a third, maybe a little more, are actually running on contact center as a service. 2/3 are still running on premises equipment, right? Legacy, designs, products that were designed 10, 20 years ago. Okay. So the best customer story I heard was a company that said, okay, I have tens of thousands of agents, and most of that is voice, but my digital side is a mess, right? What I'm doing on the digital side, I have all the things that you know about. I have one way of doing emails and something else for chat and another thing to maybe try a bot. And what I really need to do is coordinate my digital side. So this particular customer went to one of the vendors and said, okay, I need to fix this digital side. You have a solution for just the digital side of my business. My voice is fine, right? Everything's fine over there. And post deployment of that, just seeing how different the operation could be with a cloud-based digital engagement solution, they then proceeded to change out all the voice that they thought was fine, right? Suddenly, it just didn't seem as fine. Suddenly, it seemed much more important to integrate digital and voice. And as you know, and Cognigy works like this. If a customer gets lost somehow in a chatbot or a text bot, you want that easy handoff with context to a live agent. And guess what? If that's all in a single system, that becomes a lot easier. So
that's when you can finally get that warm handover and not the, I just got transferred. Do I have to repeat myself all over again?
Yep. From consumer stories, there's always great consumer stories. I had a great one this week. Let me tell it. I was in Las Vegas. I stopped at a I'm not going to say now the name, a major chain to pick up a sandwich because I had missed lunch at some point during a meeting, and left a small purse behind, right? You would think almost like a coin purse, right? But inside was my license, the key to my Lexus. So you compare those two things, the address and the car key. My brand new Lexus, some credit cards. And I didn't figure it out until I was at my home casino 2 miles away. So my first call was, okay, I'm going to get on the phone and try and get the woman who's at that, that fast food place.
Yeah.
No way to get to them. There's no way to get to the phone. There's somebody working in that store, and she may have a mobile phone for emergencies, but there's no way to find them and get to them. Next stop was to try and call the casino. Casino said, oh, there's an IVR, lost and found. Hit 4. Go to the website, fill out a form. We'll get back to you within 48 hours. Right. I was flying the next day. I need my license. Right. Thinking fast, I called back to the casino, asked for the concierge.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the concierge, told my story in 60 seconds. Long story short, I had my purse in my hand within an hour because a person took ownership. A person who knew how important it was that I needed to fly the next day with my ID, and she made all the connections human to human from there. She called over to the convention part of the casino. She got to the security person there. That person walked over to the fast food place where it was just sitting there on the counter.
Wow.
So my best customer story is we can't keep humans out of the loop. As much as this casino tried to automate lost and found, as much as that fast food place is thinking, well, everybody's got a cell phone for emergencies. This was an emergency to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we always got to keep the humans in the loop.
I think this is the classic, almost cliche now, error of mistaking technology as an end instead of a means to an end, and forgetting that at the end of the day, your company was created by people, it's run by people, it serves people. It's not a machine.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. With that in mind, I'll let you go with one final question, which is, what advice then would you give to people in the contact center going into 2024? Aside from having a concierge, clearly.
So 3 steps, right? First, establish priorities. Yep. What's your biggest pain point in 23? It could be outbound is really important to your business, and you are on legacy outbound solutions that may be doing the job, but not as well as it could be being done, and that, and you just haven't gotten it done yet. Or chat is important because 60% of your e-commerce sales are starting online with chat, right? So figure out what the priority is. Then choose somebody who can take you most of the way to your digital transformation, right? Companies, as we know, have up to 15, 20 systems that they're using for customer experience. Yeah. I don't think anybody can get to 1, but you can go from 15 to 4. Yep. You can go from 10 to 3. So establishing your priorities first, make sure whoever is the vendor that you choose can do everything you need to do, not just today's priorities, but tomorrow's as well, right? And then make progress in 24, right? Make a commitment, right? Because as we know, the biggest issue is no decision, right? Not getting something done at all. Make progress. And make progress could be completely go into productization, right? Full rollout of something. But it could also be putting in a proof of concept. For very big companies like the ones that Cognigy works with, like a lot of the companies that I work with as well, they have tens of thousands of agents, or 10,000 agents, and millions of transactions. Yep. So proof of concept, I think, is a great idea, right? You've been doing something a certain way, do that A/B testing. Right?
And it's achievable. It's not some massive IT project that suddenly scares people of change. It's
totally agree. Right. So yeah, what's my advice? Establish your priorities. Choose somebody who can take you, most of the way, and make some progress in 24.
Simple and yet not done very often. I like it. But that's how it works, I think, usually.
Yeah. Keep it simple.
Right. Thank you so much for your time. I had a really great conversation.
Thank you. Have a great holiday season here.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.